Okay, so thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are here with us, can we get a thumbs up? And I've seen that quite a number of people have started introducing themselves in the chat box. Please let's get a thumbs up. We're about to begin. If you're here with us, give us a thumbs up. Okay, so you introduce yourself in the comment box and tell us where you are joining from. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to us all. And today we have amazing panelists or amazing speakers who will be joining us, who are already here, who have joined us in the webinar. And we're doing this webinar in commemoration of the African Liberation Week. And today we'll be having a discussion with two speakers, and we're expected to have an amazing time. So, before we begin properly and introduce our guests, I would want to say that you're welcome to ACAN. If you're not a member, um, you can drop your number in the chat box and we'll add you to the WhatsApp group. ACAN is a network of African artists and activists combining art and activism to drive social change. And the network promotes connection, collaboration, co-learning on artistic activism, and supports the planning, execution, and evaluation of creative actions. So if that sounds like you, would love to have you as part of the network. As I said, you can drop your number in the chat box and we will add you to the group. So, ACAN is a subsidiary, let me call it that, of Africans Rising, and we're so excited with the support and the resources that Africans Rising has helped us to get over time. So today, as I said, we'll be having a webinar discussion, and our topic is an important topic, especially because then we have the African Liberation Week theme, which is a united Africa, the Africa that we want. And today would be considering the topic rewriting the future, creative resistance in a united Africa. What do we think a united Africa should be, and what is or what should be our own involvement in creating this united Africa? So, as I said, we have amazing speakers with us today. And as much as I would want to introduce them, I would want them to introduce themselves. We have Gbanja, who is here on the continent, and we have Dr. Ife, who is in diaspora. So we're we're sorted. So today is the International Children's Day, and I suppose that we all are someone's child. So happy Children's Day to us all. Uh, so as a way of introduction, Dr. Ife, are you still here with us? As a way of introduction, yeah. So as a way of introduction, let's have you tell us what you do. Or before you tell us what you do, let us have you tell us one of your most memorable childhood moments. Then you introduce yourself. So we'll do all of this in 2 minutes. Then we'll have Banja also tell us one of his most memorable moments as a child, and then he'll introduce himself before we get into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Great day to everyone around the world, wherever you are. I just want to first say thank you for allowing me to be here today. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for mentioning that you said it's Children's Day today. What is it called? Child's Day. And so yes, I love this because to the child is such a being a child is such a precious time in life. I guess I'll just say in general, it's not a specific memory, but my best memories are my family time with my parents and my siblings. As a child, always we would go, to local parks and things like that, local drives and things. And so just family time. It was always a great day, even if we were just in the living room, all sitting together and talking. That still was something that I treasured. And as a mom of, four and a grandma of three, is still my favorite time to have to be with my family and also my siblings to this day. My parents are gone, but thank you.
Amazing memories with family. So yes, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
So yes, my name is Dr. Ife Akinsheye Damon. I am a global educator and founder of the community-based education movement. My focus is on bringing the community and the classroom curriculum together. I'm an educator of over 25 years at this point. And yes, it's time for us to rewrite the future. And so I'm so excited to be here, and I will just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please let's put our hands together for Dr. Ife. We're happy to have you here. So yes, Gbanja, can we have you? What's your most memorable childhood memory? And then introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you for having me, first of all. So my most memorable childhood memory, it's I don't want to say it's kind of weird, it's a little awkward in a bit. So it was, Liberia went through a civil war. So my mother and myself and my grandmother got evacuated in 1990, in June, matter of fact, of 1990. And we relocated to Los Angeles, California. So of course, this young, I think I was like 7 or 8 at the time, this young kid coming from Africa to America, um, having to start school. So they tested me, to see where my aptitude test and see where I was. And I actually tested like 3 grades higher than what I was supposed to be in, right? And there was like, there's no way possible that this kid from Africa is here testing on such a high level. They tested me like 3 or 4 different times, and it was like, listen, you're 7. We can't put you 3 grades ahead. So I think they put me like 1 grade ahead. But for me, it's very memorable because it lets me know that back then how great education was in Africa, as a whole, and to leave and go to another country as great as America is and still be not just on par, but you know, better than what they expected of this African kid. For me, it was a great memory.
Amazing, amazing memory, and I'm
Yeah.
and I'm glad that your memories interconnect with what Dr. Ife does as an educator. I am sure that she is also proud that you tested 3 grades ahead of. So
Yes.
amazing, yeah. So please go ahead and introduce yourself.
So
Yeah,
I
please.
guess, wait, introduction. Okay, my name is Gbanja Scott, most commonly known in Liberia in the entertainment scene as Cypher the King. I've been a music producer, songwriter, artist, pretty much in the media field for about 25, 27 years. I officially moved back to Liberia 2008 to kind of steer where our entertainment industry was heading. So far it's been a great ride. I'm co-owner of radio station and TV station Hot FM and Hot TV, and also the spokesperson for the Liberia Creative Council, which is the creative. Um, we're for the Ministry of Youth and Sports. We are her advisory board when it comes to the creative sector in Liberia.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And again, I want to just thank you for being here and accepting to be speakers with your with the length of time you've been within the creative and educational industry. I am sure that we'll have like a robust conversation together. So, as a way to start, I think the first question would be, what do you define as creative resistance? Since the mic or the spotlight is still on you, Banja, I think you could go first, then Dr. Ife answers. In your respective fields, what do you define as creative resistance? So, Banja, you can go. You're muted.
Sorry, I didn't get that question. I didn't hear you clearly.
Yes. So, as someone who is a professional in the entertainment industry, what do you consider as creative resistance in your industry? What is creative resistance?
Oh, okay. So, for me, creative resistance is it's like the refusal to let someone else define Africa or define us as African people. Creative resistance is using our culture, storytelling, from media to music to creativity, pretty much just challenging limiting narratives, and also being creative, establishing new possibilities for our communities across Africa and in the diaspora as well. Um, I don't just see it as like a protest, so to speak. Protest is important, but protest is not enough. I think protest is like a 1 day process, whereas creative resistance is more of a long-term movement. Um, you build platforms out of creative resistance. You create opportunities. You also preserve your identity, and also gives the world at large a new way to see um, us Africans, see themselves in us and in the future of what Africa should be and could be. And because I'm in the entertainment field, in the creative economy space, I've noticed how powerful storytelling is, especially like through music. There's a saying that where politics can't go, music can reach. So I'm a strong believer that creativity is definitely one of Africa's most powerful tools when it comes to transformation.
Thank you so much for that. So, yeah, Dr. Ife, let's hear you.
So for me, when I hear the term creative resistance at the very foundational level, it makes me think about how do people use their imagination to impact change. So for me, with community-based education, the focus is on helping youth to be empowered to use their academic skills and their 21st century skills, and what I also advocate for is third millennium skills, to be creative in how they impact change in their local and global communities. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that for now because I know we're going to go into a lot. But for me, yeah, it's about how do you use your own imagination, your own skills, your own gifts, your own talents to make change, to be a change agent.
Amazing. And I think that one recurring word has been empowerment. And then how I love what you said about using our imagination. And there's something also that Gbanja had mentioned about creative resistance being a long-term movement, not just something short-term like a protest. And I truly agree with that. We'll get in that into the discussion and would explore all of these things that you were saying. So, Dr. Ife, I would want to ask that your work sits at the intersection of creativity and collective transformation, and to achieve true African liberation with our imagination, what colonial frameworks in our educational systems must be dismantled first? And what does a liberated classroom look like?
I love this question because this is what community-based education is all about. It's about transforming education completely. So when we talk about, what colonial structures need to be removed, it's all of them. So for example, okay, so there's this educator named, I can't think of her name right now, but she wrote a book called Cultural oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on it, and the brain, cultural competency in the brain is so well. Anyway, one of the parts that in her book that really was transformative for me was that she talks about culture responsive in the brain. Okay, so she talks about culture around the world, and she looks at like indigenous, global, we'll say global majority cultures. So people of what is known as people of color cultures are more collective in nature, whereas the global minority, people of non-color collective, European, Western civilizations are more individualistic. And we see that playing out in the classroom, because students are most commonly encouraged to work by themselves. There isn't any kind of collective process typically in a traditional classroom setting. And even more, one of the things that I realized when I started to think about this is even in our disciplines, they're individualistic. And so to me, that's problematic as well, because we are naturally and culturally holistically minded, and we see holistically. And so these little, having math separate and science, English, language, social studies, those things kind of are so broken up that sometimes it's hard for students to be able to make those full connections. Most students don't, because they aren't, school isn't created to make those full connections. So for me, what I'm focused on is transdisciplinary education, where it's focused on project-based learning, and even more specifically, those projects should be grounded in the real world, not just something abstract that is just some practice. But let's stop thinking that youth are the future and recognize that youth are the now, and that we need them now in order to impact change, and elevate our communities. And so for me, the colonial structures that we need to dismantle completely is the individualistic mindset.
And considering that here in Africa, we're driven by the Ubuntu concept, we are because I am because we all are. I think that that is a foundational structure that should be dismantled. We're not individualistic, we're interdependent. So that collaboration should really be encouraged in the classroom. So yes, over to you, Gbanja. So with your 20 plus years in the creative industry, and also shaping youth culture through Hot FM and Hot TV, how can independent African media houses like yours collaborate across borders to bypass colonial era media networks and share authentic African stories directly with one another? So we no longer want to have third parties. What should we do about that within the media space?
Okay, so that's as one of my favorite questions that you sent. The African independent media houses is very, very important. I think one of our biggest challenges is that many of our stories, sadly, still needs outside validation before it's taken seriously. Too many times we've seen foreign media that tell our story for us, but not the actual story and not the way it should be told. And then by the time we get to it, the context, the emotion, the authenticity, sometimes, most of the time, it gets lost. And then for us to come back and have to retell those stories and reach those same millions and billions of people that have already been reached is kind of hard, and it makes us look, kind of like we're not in control of what we're doing. We already have the radio stations, community newsrooms, all our digital creators and podcasts. I think we're not lacking in talent. I think what we're really missing is collaboration, right? Our stories should be able to reach from here to Nigeria, to Kenya, to South Africa, to Rwanda, to even our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. We have enough distribution networks that we can easily come together and start putting these ideas together and push our own narrative to our own people. The great thing now is that the African American community are really, really tapping into our African heritage. So we definitely should take huge advantage of that. I believe in African storytelling. I feel like there's a lot of, like these parables that we grew up with that can work in today's settings and with the situations that's going on in the world. I think bringing those stories back and kind of like doing a remix to them and make it more modern to where the youth can adapt to it, I think that will help as well. But definitely, we definitely need collaboration. That's something where we've been talking about here, how to kind of create like a African Creative Media Commons, where we have creative houses and creative hubs in different African countries where we're sharing information. We're collaborating on documentaries, and uplifting songs and things like that. So definitely for me, it's the collaboration, and pushing our narrative together.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for that thought. And you mentioned something about authenticity, and I'll just want you to also shed some light on how African creatives can balance artistic purity and political resistance with financial sustainability and, you know, media business acumen. Because then we can't talk authenticity without the artistic purity and um, talking about funding and all of those things. So, how can African creatives balance their artistic purity and the political resistance they face with the financial sustainability and then the media business acumen they need to push this content?
Um, well, it's hard, but it's definitely doable. Um, like I said, we just have to be intentional. Um, I know politics comes into play a lot, when it comes to being authentic and actually telling our true story. But it just takes one person or one group of people that can actually stand up and say, okay, regardless of what's going on in our country or in our region politically, or whatever the resistances are, this is the narrative that we're going to push. This is the actual story. People need to know the actual story. It's some people might, feelings might get hurt. I'll give you an example. In Liberia, there's been so many stories of how the war started, who killed the last president, President Tolbert, how they entered into the executive mansion yards. There are so many conflicting stories. It's a story that the West kind of pushed that narrative early on before Liberians even had a chance to tell their own side of the story. So while the war was going on, the foreign media is pushing a whole different narrative and agenda of what is actually happening in Liberia. So it's a matter of now, fast forward many decades later, it's like, okay, this is our truth. We have to tell the truth, regardless of if some people are guilty or their family members are guilty. It's something that needs to happen. One thing that we've been fighting for in Liberia is the War and Economic Crimes Court, which I think will also help to actually tell stories, because we have a lot of people here that know information, that want to tell it. They might not have the necessary media outlet that they feel will get out, into the world. So they hold on to those stories. So I think something like the War Crimes Court, where it will definitely be international, it'll be global. People can actually get the stories out there, and some people actually have evidence to back it up. So for me, it's about being intentional and just sticking with it. And you almost have to be like, the forefront of things, and just put your foot down and say, this is our story and we have to tell it the right way.
Amazing. This is our story, and we have to tell it our way. So, Dr. Ife, back to you. Talking about intentionality, you have created a framework, that empowers students to investigate community issues and develop creative action-oriented responses. Can you share an example of how youth have used this model to address a localized issue, probably like environmental justice or gender justice, or ha- just share with us any examples of how youths have used this to address local
Okay.
issues?
Okay. You cut out a little bit, but I got the gist of what you're asking. So I just want
Oh,
to first, that's okay. Share just to give a quick overview of the project. So our signature project is the Community Advocacy Project, and that is a project where students they have to first identify an issue that negatively impacts their communities. And so I'll just say the number one issue has been mental health here in New York, in Africa. I would say the top issue has been for access to sanitary products for women and girls, especially young girls. One of the things that I learned and took for granted is that young women in schools, they don't come to school when they are menstruating. And so there's these gaps in knowledge that they end up having because of just lack of access to something that we take for granted here in the United States. In schools, you can just go to the nurse's office and get a sanitary napkin or something like that. So gang violence, environmental issues, as you said. So there were plenty of issues that students have selected with this project. And so once they identify the issue that negatively impacts their community, then they have to conduct research on the issue. And so they have to collect both qualitative and quantitative data from primary and secondary sources. And so I want to just kind of highlight that because the qualitative data is actually the storytelling piece. And so it's critical for us to hear the voice, for youth to hear the voice of the people and not just do, just collect statistical data, but to also just understand the lived experiences of people when we're talking about these different issues that matter to them. This is the student-centered project. And so they get to select things that matter to them. So once they have collected all of this data, then they decide how they want to take action to make change. So it's not just about being researchers, but being action-based researchers. And so some of the things that students have done to take action is if they found that it's a lack of knowledge is a root cause to their issue, they've created public service announcements videos. They've created their own YouTube channels or social media, Instagram channels to constantly bring awareness to the issue. Some students have taken direct action. So for example, when we talk about like environmental justice, for example, here in New York City, and even more specifically, I'm on Staten Island. And so we're surrounded by water. We have multiple beaches. And so some students, ocean pollution and, just beach pollution is something that's very prevalent here. And so some students even take direct action by galvanizing people to clean up the beach, in addition to bringing awareness of pollution and the problems with pollution, because the real thing is about knowledge, and so sometimes most root causes are people just don't know any better. Or they're, even if they know better, they may be in a place of pain, I'll say, to not do better. And so this is a way for young people to help people to, be able to address that and really analyze that. And so, so students are taking actions in those ways. Sometimes they're collaborating with existing organizations. Again, this is community-based education. And so it's about for doing something for the community, with the community, and by the community. And so the students are throughout this process collaborating with community members in order to be able to complete this project. And so again, it is that Ubuntu mindset. I am, even though I'm not was not born on the continent, I am a Kwanzaa girl, and so I was raised in those African-centered ways of being, and so that community mindset is a part of who I am, and I know that that's the missing element in today's world. So we have to transition in order to be able to help youth to use their voices, to use their creativity. And so you hear the taking action is really about their opportunity to be creative and how they want to create change in that area. And so it's not about they're going to, reverse global warming in a semester or something like that, but it's about how can you take small action to be able to make small change and to be able to understand that small change over time can build into larger change.
Amazing work the students are doing, you and the students are doing. So I love the examples you've given, and I love that it's a co-creation. It's not just the students being one side, or the community one side, but it's a collaborative effort, and that's what we've been discussing, like since the webinar started. So before there's another question related to this one. But before we move ahead, if you're just joining us, this is the ACAN African Liberation Week webinar, and we're still here with Gbanja Scott and Dr. Ife Damon. And we're considering the topic Rewriting the Future, Creative Resistance in the United Africa. We're projecting into the future, what should a united Africa look like, or what is a united Africa, and what are we doing to make sure that Africa is united? And we've been having an amazing conversation again with our speaker. So Dr. Ife, you said something about, okay, I think it's Gbanja that mentioned, or you mentioned something again about being intentional. And you've also mentioned how, the students are collaborating with communities to make sure that these little actions, translate into little changes, which are big changes over time. Your work connects youth and educators across the United States and African continent. What have you observed about young people on both sides? And what do you think? What has been your observation about how, or when you've given them like shared creative spaces, how does this shape the Pan African identity? So again, let me just take the question. What have you observed about how young people on both sides of the Atlantic co-create when giving shared creative spaces, and how does this shape their Pan-African identity?
So I want to just first say that the students have not yet been able to co-create on both sides of the Atlantic. I love the way you framed that. However, what I will say is that there is a desire on both sides. There is a strong desire. Students have a fire within them, and they have ideas already about what the issues are and what they would like to see change. And many even have solutions about how to, address some of those issues. So, for example, I'll just say that there are students in Ethiopia right now who are they have a patent pending for a biodegradable, recyclable sanitary pad that they're creating out of some sort of plant that is prevalent in their area, that will be able to be utilized for students to be able to provide these resources and fill a need. And so I would say that I want to see opportunities for students to collaborate intercontinentally or internationally. That hasn't happened yet, but there are issues that are common amongst these young people. Like mental health is definitely something that is being discussed on in both continents. Of course, climate justice, environmental justice is something that youth have expressed in both areas. And so it really is about trying to find opportunities and willingness of those schools or those communities to be able to create something on an international scale where they collaborate together. But that is the vision, when we think about all of us being global citizens. We're earthlings. That's what I like to say. Like how thinking about ourselves as earthlings is so not just how do we collaborate with each other as fellow humans, but how are we collaborating with the planet? What are we doing to engage and respect the planet, and also recognize the resources that are already here. Like I just said, a student has done the research to understand that there's a plant that would be perfect for creating sanitary napkins. That's something I had no idea about. Like there's so much funds of knowledge that we have. And so we really need to start, again, the theme is around the collaboration. That's our only answer. And I just want to say to speak to Brother Gbanja has talked about authenticity, and I was excited to hear that, because for me, I feel like authenticity is the currency of the future. And so we need to empower young people more and more to embrace who they are, completely, unapologetically, because that's what we need in this third millennium. Yes, we're in the 21st century, but we're also in the third millennium. And even though we may not be here for the entire 1,000 years, there are certain systems that we can put in place now that will help to start to create sustainable ways of being that are the future generations that are yet to come. Or I think about my grandson, my youngest grandson, he's Gen B. Like Gen B is out here now, and so what are we doing to set up success? Or I ask myself, how am I setting up success for my grandson and his grandchildren, to be able to be authentic earthlings, and so I really appreciate you using that word authenticity, because we really need to, our youth right now, especially, Gen Z and prior, have been caught up in trying to, especially with social media, like we people want to keep up with the illusion and not be their true selves, but being your authentic self is where the real power is. And so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I know that if we were to let you, you'd speak and speak and speak. You're not educated, so we know. But we're sorry that we would have to cut you short. But thank you so much for the great insight that you've given so far. So back to Gbanja. Doctor was talking about creating systems and structures, and I wanted to just know, in your experience with the Liberian music production and broadcast, what makes a song or a piece of audio content, or any artistic expression, what makes that piece of art transition from simple entertainment into a tool for social solidarity? So what really makes the art a tool for social justice activism or social solidarity?
Okay, thank you. I couldn't wait. I was hoping for this question early on. So for me, as I said, I'm a music producer, storyteller, artist, songwriter, and I've always believed, right, music really becomes powerful when people stop hearing it as just entertainment, but they begin hearing themselves in the song, right? So it's like song captures shared feelings, struggles, dreams, frustration, hope. When it's like that, then it becomes bigger than the artist who actually created it. Like, I'll give you some examples. Like here on the motherland, Fela with Zombie, Brenda Fassi, Black President, Bobby Wine, Freedom, Burna Boy, Monsters You Made. All these are songs that people can connect with, whether they're the older generation, our generation, the younger generation. There's still some things that are happening, that you can pull from those songs, and also those songs also let you know where we've come from and how far we've gotten, to where we are right now. And to come back to the authenticity, it's very, very, very important, especially in music. Like music, yes, is entertaining, but music is also educational, right? And you can, like for example, like Bob Marley, Get Up, Stand Up. It's thought provoking. It makes you think, like, yeah, you want to have fun. You go in the club or you go to the bar, listen to music. But sometimes when you're home and you're by yourself and you're reflecting, there's just certain songs that you put on and you sit and you think, and it was like, wow, I never really understood that message until now. Sometimes it takes you going through things in life, and then listening to a particular song, and it makes you understand it even more now that you've gone through what the artist was talking about. So definitely, our music transcends, all across Africa. Like especially now that the eyes and ears are on Africa, African entertainment, music, fashion. This is our chance now to hold on to that and say, okay, now let's tell you guys what's really happening in Africa, and what we need to do. There's one thing I always say is that we can always talk about what the issues are, right? Because everybody will have the same issues, but at some point in time, we have to start talking about, what the solutions are. What's the way forward? We can always say, "Oh, the government is this, the government is that." Okay, what what is the way forward? What can we do in spite of the government? We as private sector citizens, as creatives, as entertainers, what can we do to move things forward so we don't always have to sing the same old song about being oppressed and and corruption. Yes, corruption is everywhere in the world, but okay, how can we move past that? So I think definitely music, can transcend, and once we create that emotional ownership amongst our people, it stop being it moves from being background noise to becoming the foreground and energizing the whole movement.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for that insight. In fact, some songs, you listen to some songs, this on a lighter note, you listen to some songs and you vibe to it and all of that. Then when your heart gets broken, then you listen to that song again. Then you get the original message of the song. So yeah, and then Dr. Ife started talking about something concerning authenticity, which you also shed some light on, and then you also talked about creating the way forward. Dr. Ife also talked about creating systems and structures. So how can the contemporary digital media landscape in Africa and the diaspora, because then we're having like a conversation is that surmounts our borders. So how can the contemporary digital media landscape in Africa, in the diaspora, be strategically designed to inspire youth away from passive consumption, just as you were talking about, towards active pan-African civic participation? We're having this African Liberation Week, and as I said, our theme is a united Africa, the Africa we want. How do we make sure that the content we're developing, music, spoken word poetry, visual arts, films, the kind of festivals that we're curating, how do we make sure that these things are strategically designed to inspire the youth towards Pan African civic participation?
Okay, thank you. So like right now, a lot of the digital platforms are designed to keep young people um, consuming instead of contributing, right? So the youth are they're constantly scrolling, they're reacting, they're following trends, but we haven't really invested enough in systems that will encourage them to participate, to as you said, to organize, to create, and to lead um, these festivals, like what we're doing now with this webinar. The positive side, though, is that the African youth worldwide, they're already highly creative. They're digitally active. The challenge is making the participation feel culturally relevant and exciting. Podcasts, sports, music, as I said before, spoken word, fashion. I think the fashion world, there's something there that's untapped. Um, the influencer culture has grown. Digital storytelling, those can be like entry points into bigger conversations. Like when you start talking about entrepreneurship, um, leadership, even if you get into governance. But I do believe that the youth, they need more opportunities to build, not just consume. So that means we need more creative hubs, more digital education, media training is something that's heavy, especially for us here in Liberia. We have a lot of young creators that post just for likes, right? And they're not being they're not worried about what happens. Like, they're not being more responsible as creators. So media training definitely, creative programs, and also monetization pathways. We recently had a workshop with Meta and TikTok from the offices in Nigeria, and that's one thing they talked about was, besides like being monetized through like Meta and TikTok, there are other ways of getting monetized. Like you can reach out to brands, you can be brand influencers, brand ambassadors, consultants, but that's based on the content that you produce. So it comes back to me to when I talked about responsible content. Um, I feel like once the youth understand that they can use their creativity to shape society, improve their lives financially, they can go from being spectators to actually being true stakeholders in Africa's like digital future. So definitely we have to get behind the youth, let them know that listen, you guys are consuming more than you're creating. And I think too, when we talk about like the Pan-African civic participation. I think too the way that we engage the youth when it comes to history, I think also plays a part. Um, Not everybody might want to sit and watch a 1 hour documentary or 45-minute documentary. Let's find ways to do short mini episodes on, on different parts of history from different African countries. We just have to tap into, Gen Z, their attention span is very short. So we have to keep things, short and hit and get straight to the point, and just instead of a 10-15 minute video, make it 2-3 minutes, but make it very impactful to where, okay, that 3 minutes, they got a lot of knowledge and they're looking forward to what the next video is.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I love the thing you said about, building, not just consuming. Um, we youth of this generation are comfortable being consumers. And if we are to create a united Africa, we are to build, we are to contribute. And, a person wouldn't see the value of something they have not contributed to. So, probably when the youth begin to contribute more, then they will see the value of, the creative space, and why they should build it, and why we should also have like United Africa and all. So thank you so much. Then tying this to something you were saying, Dr. Ife, about using research as part of your tools to in the things that you're doing, the space that you're working. How can we? Sorry, 1 minute. As an educator, how can we best train young artists or activists to translate their creative expressions into data that policymakers cannot ignore? Gbanja has answered the question on how we can develop frameworks, how we can encourage the youth by building, systems that aid them. So, how can we train these youth to translate their creative expression into data that policymakers cannot ignore? Because then the whole purpose of having activism or artivism is for a change, for positive change. So how can we educate them in such a way that allows for their art to not be ignored?
So community-based education. That's the answer to me. So let me just elaborate a little bit though. So while community-based education is ideally designed to live in classrooms, and the reason why for me, that's the most powerful space. Well, at least in America, I'll say, because I have learned, this is not the case necessarily always in Africa. But that's where you're going to find the most children. That's where you're going to have in America, children are required to go to school. And so that's where you can cast the biggest net to have that access to be able to bring those opportunities to them. Because like Brother Gbanja said, when young people are on their phones, they're just scrolling and being passive. But in school, they are more likely to do what's required of them because they want to, go to the next level. Now, I know in Africa, of course, there are, millions of children in school, but I've also learned through direct experience that there's a number of young people who are responsible for their own survival and are not in school at all. And I don't know if this is the case in Liberia because I haven't had the opportunity to visit Liberia yet, but I've definitely seen it in the countries that I have been in. And so for those young people, they're still artists, even though they're not in school. And so it's really still about the community providing opportunities to elevate these youth in their voice and to say, hey, I see that you're great at whatever it is that they're great at. We have this issue here. I even work with homeschool parents as well, and so that's an opportunity. I can kind of consider those children to be homeschool children in a sense of their or community school children, I'll say, because even though they're not in a formal education institution, they are still learning. They're in global school. I honestly feel like they're in the greater school because they are learning real life skills in the moment. And it's not an abstract thing for them. They are concretely involved in it. But what is missing is the opportunity for them to maybe have mentors and people who can help to take those amazing skills. They already have people skills, they have entrepreneurial mindsets already. And so if there can be mentors or opportunities for programs to be created, which is something that I am very interested in, creating programs for those youth specifically, where it's focused on allowing them to use their imagination in order to elevate their communities, with their communities. And so the piece that's needed is the community. It really is. It's about people saying, hey, I have this asset that could be useful for these young people. Maybe they don't even know that they can use their skills to do something that is not only just about them, but also, or just about them and their families, but also about their entire collective, the entire community that they're a part of, or even the global community. And so if we can, as adults, use our expertise, our skills, our talents to be able to bring those youth up under our umbrella, I think that we can see a lot of powerful change take place.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really want to appreciate you both, Dr. Ife and Gbanja, for bringing, this wealth of insights. And I know that the time is not even enough for us to go in depthly into, certain things that we've spoken about. But I really want to thank you, because then we're also taking note of the things that you're saying. Please take, if you're listening, I would want us to put up the poll now. Amma would be having all the All Movement Assembly later in the year, and we're also gathering data to know what Africans think about what a united Africa looks like, right? And all these conversations that we've had are geared towards that. So I think the poll will be up in no distant time. I'd want us, if you're following, please engage in the poll so that we'll get your insights as to what you think, or what your vision is for a united Africa. So I think the last question I would love that you both answer would be, if there's one crucial message or structural shift from your specific creative disciplines, you as an educator, Dr. Ife, and then Gbanja as a media personality, um, is there is there any specific message or structural shift that you believe that must be included in the reports that guides future continental advocacy? If you have any, what would it be? So if there's one thing you'd want, one message that you'd want us to take away, I mean, we're taking away all of the things you've said, but if there's one message you'd want us to take away from this discussion that pertains to continental advocacy, social advocacy, and social engagement, what would it be? So since Gbanja hasn't spoken for a while, let's have him, then you, Dr. Ife.
Okay, thank you. So I guess it's like my closing statement. For me, so the biggest structural shift I believe African needs is to stop treating creatives like decoration and start treating them like infrastructure. Our media, music, storytelling, digital culture, creative platforms, we can't keep them as side industries. These are the people that shape identity. They influence public thinking. They mobilize the youth. They contribute to economic growth. They also help define how Africa is understood both internationally and internally. For a very long time and for too long, the creatives have been acknowledged, like during entertainment moments or political campaigns, as almost like oh, you did like a song for a campaign, or they use you for performances. But while doing that, the whole creative sector, we're still we're not funded. There's no investment. There's no protection, no institutional support. So for me, if Africa wants stronger continental unity, stronger youth engagement, stronger global influence, then we have to invest in the creatives. They must be part of our long-term development strategy. We can't continue using them as an afterthought. So for me, yeah, the future of Pan-African connection and influence, it's definitely going to be shaped, and we're seeing it happen now. It is going to be shaped heavily through our culture. So before the speeches and policies are signed, and you remember all these political speeches, people will only and always remember the songs, the stories, the visuals, the cultural movements that that made them feel connected. Um, Politicians, they're trying to get your votes. They're not really trying to connect to you, right? But the creatives, we're telling our stories, we're pushing our culture, and everybody can connect to that. Whether you are of African descent or of African American descent, there's something that you can tap onto. For like example, Liberia has historical ties to the U.S., so there's a lot of African Americans that find their way. I'll give you a perfect example. I Shall Speak came to Liberia in January. Um, he found out that I think he's a Wilkins, and the Wilkins originated from the Midwest, Ohio, and Detroit, and they're also Wilkins family here in Liberia. So that connection right there, now you have this global superstar that's connected to Liberia that can learn more about the culture and push it even more. So definitely culture is the future for Africa.
Thank you so much. Culture is the future of Africa. Amazing. So yes, Dr. Felata.
So I'll just say, I want to first just ground this in a phrase that I'm sure we all know, and that's it takes a village to raise a child, right? And so that's where the village is missing from the education system. The village is, of course, is still there, and children, and that's where the culture lives, is in the village. But not only do I believe it takes a village to raise a child, I also believe it takes a child to raise a village. And so we have to continue to think about how are we supporting our youth in their own imagination in order to empower them to use it to be able to catapult us into the future, but also by the Sankofa, how do we make sure that they are grounded in indigenous knowledge, and how are they using that indigenous knowledge coupled with the technological era that we're in order to shape the future. For me, as I said, and everybody has heard, I wasn't born on the continent, but nobody can tell me I'm not African. So you'll hear me when I'm saying we about Africa, like you can't tell me that I'm not African. And so, we have to come together. And for me, it is Africa that is the next frontier. It's the it's coming back, it's the cycle. And so it is Africa's time, and all things show it. The evidence is out there, even with our revolutionary leaders in different countries. And so, it really is about recognizing that these colonial systems have created a narrative that is false, first of all, because we have to understand what's false and then be able to move and be grounded in what the truth is. But we have to do that together, And so for those of us, people like you, Brother Gbanja, you, Sister Felicity, and others who are in these creative spaces, using that creativity to come, get the youth, and help them to be able to discover who they are. A lot of young people are lost and think that their identity has to be related to what they see in social media. So being able to find opportunities to really help them to tap in and learn, who they truly are is critical, and who they are in context of the continental society as well as the global society. The world is waiting. This is my real final phrase. The world is waiting for us as Africans to come together so that we can bring the world together.
such a powerful closing statement. The world is waiting for us, to bring the world together as Africans. That's amazing. Again, if you're just joining us, we have been speaking with Dr. Ife Damon and Gbanja Scott on creative resistance in a united Africa. And I want to sincerely thank you both for your time and this wealth of knowledge. Thank you. This wealth of knowledge that you've brought to ACAN. We appreciate you. And you know, the conversation does not stop here. Would continue having such conversations, and I'm sure that both Doctor and Gbanja, your doors are open to us, just in case we would need you back on here to to continue to speak on the things that you've spoken already about. We really want to appreciate you for your time, and I don't know why the poll has not been up, but hopefully we'll do that. We'll put up the poll on the group so that people can be able to engage in the conversation as well. And I don't know if you would also be opportune. You both will be opportune to be at AMA this year, but I look forward to seeing. Okay. I think that the poll is up. So please, if you're with us, Doctor, can you see the poll? Yeah. So
Yes, it's there.
yeah. So let me just give us 2 minutes to. Yeah, I can see people responding. Let me just give us 2 minutes to respond to the poll so that we can before we proceed to my final comment.
Someone in the comments asked, "Where's the poll?" So I'm not sure if they're seeing it or just the panelists.
Uh, People are responding already, so I don't know.
Okay,
Tech,
maybe
if you can hear me, the poll
they
would
said they
appear.
see it. They said
Okay,
they see
okay,
it now.
okay, amazing. Okay, so please let us engage the poll. Uh,
Uh, for just it's like so the first one is here. So I'm gonna end this. Now we have
okay,
5 of 7. So meaning that
okay,
5 people responded. So we can end it here, then launch the second, right?
okay, yes. So we can get the second poll.
Yeah, the second is here.
Okay, okay. So I think, okay.
Just gonna give 2 minutes for each poll, then now we can
Sorry, I was muted. I said, how many more poll questions we have? I think that 1 minute is enough so that we can
we have
we can.
five.
Okay. So I think we can get the other one. We can end this one here and get the other one. So just a minute, please. If you're engaging the
Okay.
poll, we have just a minute to engage each poll so that we can release Dr. Ife and Gbanja to their respective works. Okay.
So here is the third one. So 1 minute.
Uh-huh.
These poll questions and options are so good. There needs to be a E, all of the above.
Okay. As I said, we would be collecting some more data on the ACAN group and on the Facebook as well. So probably thank you so much for that feedback. We'll also modify it to have the um, all of the above option. Okay, Tech, we can have the next poll.
Yeah.
Okay, can we have the next?
Okay. So this is the last one.
Okay, this is the last one, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Good.
Okay, so thank you so much, Tech, for helping out. And I hope that this poll has also inspired you and also added to the, yeah, thank you, Annette. Thank to the vision that you have of a United Africa. Are there any questions? Because then I didn't see anybody place any question in the chat box. Are there any questions? If there are any questions, please would have them now. But if there are no questions, then would say our final goodbye, and then each and every one of us would go enjoy their Children's Day celebration. So, so are there any questions? Okay, thank you, Valerie. Valerie says, thank you all for this great conversation. Thank you also for following us. Um, thank you. Oh, Dr. Fair, sending a heart. Let me send you a heart back. Okay. So, okay. Yes, and we would continue to educate to liberate. Thank you so much. Oh, Axel is here. Um, so Axel is representing Africans Rising. I don't know if Axel would love to say something before we end the call. Tech, can you please add Axel so that she can speak? Okay. Axel, can you hear
Oh,
me?
thanks,
Yes.
Felicity. I think I was just being promoted. Thank you so much to our speakers for coming to this webinar. Today, unfortunately, today happens to be also a public holiday for many people. And when we realized it, we were like, oh, because there are people who are in between celebrations and all of that. And we started thinking that maybe it would be a good idea to postpone, but then again we said no, let's stick to having it. And the beautiful thing is that it was also being live streamed on Africans Rising's Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages, I think, so which also allows people to be able to view the webinar even much later, and allowing us to also share that. So thank you so much to your speakers for coming and for sharing. We really do appreciate you, and to all the other comrades who joined. Thank you for coming. I got in and out of the conversation because we've also had some poor connectivity and electricity issues. So I'm actually even joining in from my phone. But for the time when I was here, I enjoyed the conversation, and I think that it was good that we left it for it to happen like this, and also the choice of our speakers. So thank you. I think that's all I'd like to say, and happy African Liberation Week, because at Africans Rising, we say African liberation cannot be celebrated on one day, which is May 25th. So we're celebrating African liberation the whole of this week from May 25th right up until May 31st. So happy African Liberation Week, and let us continue to push our dreams for a one and united Africa. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So, as I mentioned earlier, ACAN is a subsidiary of Africans Rising, and Axel, as well as Tech, has been providing us support on all of our webinars. They're our intermediaries with Africans Rising. So, thank you so much, Axel, for thanking our speakers. And I want to again say thank you so much to you, Gbanja Scott, and to Dr. Ife. We would continue the conversation offline and online when we can. Thank you so much to everyone who joined today. If you have any further questions, you can follow us on Facebook, African Creative Action Network, or as I mentioned, you can send me a message on WhatsApp so that you can be added on the group. Thank you so much. Have uh, an amazing week. Happy Children's Day and happy African Liberation Week. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And to you, Dr. Ife, it was nice being on this panel with you.
Likewise, and I hope to be able to connect with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Tech, over to you.